Hello and good evening and welcome to our first lecture on positions on urbanism, a series which is seeking new contemporary multidisciplinary approaches to discuss current challenges concerning our built environment. And as we know, the challenges haven't become less in terms of political and ecological issues especially. And that's one reason we think it's more and more important to integrate multidisciplinary other views in our architectural thinking. Thank you, Lara Almarcegui, for doing the first lecture on this series. Lara Almarcegui is a Spanish artist who is working in Rotterdam and living there for quite a while. So your lecture will be called Construction Rubble, Wastelands and Mining Rights. And in your work you address urban transformation processes as a result of political, social and economic changes. Since the mid-1990s you have been directing your gaze to urban conditions that are not usually the focus of perception: fallow land, building materials, the invisible. At a time of extensive urban regeneration in Europe, you are creating guides for the city's wastelands and even instigating their legal protection. You are also working towards the acquisition of mineral rights on iron ore deposits in order to prevent extraction. Very much looking forward to your lecture tonight and to discuss your work later.
Great. Well, thanks. Thanks for the invitation and presenting me. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I must say my English sometimes tend to mix up a little bit with other languages, or maybe you just don't hear well because of the noise here, or if maybe I say something too fast, just stop me. And then I try to say it again in proper English or explain it better. Just stop me if you don't hear me behind. So I don't have to be all the time asking if you hear me, just stop me whenever necessary. So yeah, thanks for the invitation. For me, it is special to present my work in the frame of an architecture institute. It's challenging and rewarding. I'm an artist, I study art, but my work is a lot about buildings and architecture. This is mainly since I was a student, since I started my practice, when I try to understand construction, I try to understand buildings, I try to understand how space is made and designed. And I did that kind of very spontaneous while walking around and looking at buildings. I watch with friends, actually is what I did most of the time, just walking around the city and look at buildings. And I enjoy them a lot, but I also start to notice that at the time I was understanding them a little bit better, analyzing them, I thought actually there were too many buildings. There was too much architecture, too much construction. I had the feeling that wherever I was, I was always surrounded by construction and design. Okay, we can put that in context. That's something we can say in many places, I guess. But this was the 90s. This was Spain. So there was like construction, design, but there was also an euphoria. There was a furor, like everyone was so excited about building. It was like design is gonna save us or something, like we are gonna be better. And it was a moment of optimism and really a furor of construction. And something seemed to me that I don't know if I wanted so much design, because design is control of the space. And I didn't want to be all the time in a space designed by someone else. So it feels somehow claustrophobic or something, to be always surrounded by all these designs made by architects. I feel like all the space around me was being rationalized and controlled. And it didn't feel okay to me. So in a very spontaneous way, I started to do a practice, artist practice that was standing against this design, which is standing against construction and architecture. And how I did it? Well, I did a lot of things, but something that worked for me was defending what I thought was the opposite of design. Opposite of design for me was what you call fallow land, wastelands, empty lots, grounds that are not developed, ruined buildings, spaces that somehow escape design. And I will show you what I did with some of them, because while defending them, I was kind of defending what is not architecture. So this is a super old work, really, well, I'm almost ashamed to show it, but it's important for me. I was a student, and I was invited to be part of a workshop in San Sebastian, in Basque Country. And the idea of the organizer of the workshop was that we would do a show. We would do a group show in this building the night before the demolition. This building that was a market hall was scheduled to be demolished in 1 month. And the idea is that we could do whatever we want. Everything was allowed because the building was gonna fall apart. It was very hard for me when I see the building to see that this building was gonna be demolished, because as architecture is quite okay, but it was still working as a market. So the life of the neighborhood that a market is, the market halls, the food, the exchange place a market is, was about to disappear from the demolition. So it felt really very painful, and I didn't want to profit from that demolition as an artist. So I decided I would not be part of the exhibition. I refused the exhibition, and instead of the exhibition, what I did was to renovate the market. There were just 3 weeks left. So I hurry up so much as I can to talk with the art center, the curator, get the painting, get the scaffold, and work so much as we can. There was no time to do a good renovation, but what for me was important was to be in the street, renovating, doing the process of it, even if it was useless, because it was not an efficient renovation. I couldn't stop the demolition. It was a way to question the demolition. So people that were passing in the street, they would see me and they would question why they are renovating a building scheduled to be demolished. And then they would question the demolition itself. So try to think about the whole urban renewal problematic. And if you think, well, I was a very young artist, and this project is important because it helped me to take position for young artists and for young architects maybe as well, but maybe a little bit takes more time. Maybe it's less important, but for young artists, taking position is really important at young age. And position is from which distance you want to talk. What is your engagement? And in that terms, this work was important for me, because there I decide about my engagement. I mean, I was doing physical work, renovating a building, which I love, and even if it was useless. But what was also very important, how the art was understood in general by the art market, or taught to me in the art school, is that artists will produce artworks in the studio that get packaged, they go to the truck, and then they go to the exhibition space, the gallery. And then maybe they get seen or acquired. And I disagree with that. As an artist, I don't want to be this object producer. I want to deal with the whole problematic and think about the space, not just produce objects. And I also feel very similar to how I understand the practice of a little bit how I see the role of architects in the city. They create spaces, and we inhabitants supposed to fill them in, maybe with things we buy or something. So this idea of being passive in the space as an inhabitant of the city, I disagree, and that's why this work, even if it's so old, I think it's important. It's also fun to show it here in Lucerne, because when I was thinking about this work, I discussed it with the curator, and she mentioned the panorama of Lucerne as a reference on the photo of Jeff Wall, where they are renovating the panorama, the fact of renovating. And today I could see it, the Bubowski panorama, you call. This is a very different work I did later. In this case, I calculate all the construction materials used to make this water tower. Like, these are 50 cubic meters of brick, 12 cubic meters of stone. This, if you mix the sand and the cement, 4 cubic meters of concrete, and the steel, I forgot which. These are all the materials you need to build the water tower. So these are the 50 cubic meters of brick, the foundations for the stone, also the details, and the concrete. So this was my work, calculating the construction materials necessary to build the water tower, and then borrowing the materials from a construction company and piling them up. They are the same materials and the same amount. So it's a work about the volume of construction. And of course, it means destroying the water tower, but also analyzing the water tower, getting to understand it very well. Thinking about what is the origin of any architecture, the enormous amount of construction materials. At this time, and again, this was a while ago, there was a lot of discussion. Architecture was very often discussed in terms of images, also like visual art. What I do is called visual art, so the visual, the idea of the image. Some architects, like for example the Spanish Fisac, had a reference in an interview trying to go further than the image. When he defined what for him a building is, he said buildings are the space inside, trying to go further. But for me, the idea that a building is an image or the air inside the building is not enough. It's really not enough. I was looking for something more material. So this work, what I was saying, a building is 50 cubic meters of brick, 12 cubic meters of stone. So it was the hardest way I could do to destroy these very idealized images of architecture that were very, very common. You can't imagine, everyone talked about architecture in that terms at that time, at least that I know in Spain in the 90s. Well, this I work with sponsors, so we borrow the materials and then we give them back. Just to give you the tip that sometimes things that are so big that are impossible to afford, you can make for free if you have sponsors. This is a work I did in Belgium a bit later, but with a building that was scheduled to be demolished. This house here, it's a small house, it's almost just a garage here, and these 2 floors here were demolished, all here, and also this went down. And I asked the developer to keep the rubble for me, so we did the rubble mountain. The rubble mountain is the same materials of the house. Actually, they are the materials of the house. It's not the copy as the water tower, but they are the real materials. What is important of this work is the scale 1:1. But if this here you have the beginning of a building, here is the end, actually. And actually, I must say I like this one much more than the other. I mean, they're very similar works, but the end is the ruin, is the future, the more unknown. So as formally, I quite enjoyed this kind of installation much more. Well, I can also say as the anecdote, this one, the mayor of the village didn't like it, so he censored. This one was not censored, but was very mediatic in the press. This was very hated. So these works were very hated because they were considered megalomaniac, like really too big, like art shouldn't be so big. But you know, there are works about the scale of architecture, so that an artist is accused of the scale when actually they are rather small buildings. I choose to work with the smallest buildings I find because I couldn't afford a bigger one. So it's kind of interesting. Do you know Secesión in Vienna, the art center? It's a very special art center that we like very much because it was started by artists, so it's the oldest artist-run space in the world, basically still run by artists, and it's a very beautiful architecture. So it was a challenge to do an installation there. There, again, I identified all the construction materials used to make the big hall, the main exhibition space, how much brick they are, how much concrete they use, and then, well, terrazzo, all the materials, and then we borrowed them, but we didn't demolish Secesión. Of course, we don't want to demolish Secesión. We borrow the same amount of materials from demolition companies. So we look at rubble, construction rubble, the leftover of demolition materials in Vienna, and we look at the same amount. So you see the concrete mountain, for example, the 43 cubic meters. This is the wood. This is the mortar, super clean. You will see better here. It was amazing how much they separate. This is the mortar, and this is the brick. The biggest amount, the 98 cubic meters. They keep it so clean that it looks like a red pigment. I have seen the treatment plant. So I've seen the machine where they put the pieces of wall, the bricks with the mortar, and it separated that way. And so we create this sort of landscape of materials In Venice Biennale, they invited me to do the Spanish pavilion, and we did the same thing. We identified the construction materials used to build the pavilion, and then we put them in. What happened in Venice is that they don't separate materials so much as in Vienna. So what in Vienna were 5 different mountains, here is one huge mountain. This mountain contained the concrete, well, actually you can see the concrete, the tiles, the mortar, the bricks, all this together. And then the mountain was enormous. It was like about 600 cubic meters of material. It's quite a lot. And actually it occupied most of the pavilion. The center of the pavilion, the main space, was occupied, so people couldn't walk there, just in the corridors around. So this mountain was almost like threatening the construction of the pavilion itself, because it was so big and also so heavy. I mean, if a building has to carry the same amount of materials used to build it, it might collapse. So this is, okay, there is no cellar, and well, okay, these are things we look at carefully to prevent, but this threat is interesting because it refers to the ruin, to the end of a building, the end of an architecture. Yeah, at the same time I have been piling up materials. Sometimes we don't pile up the material, it's just too expensive or impossible, and I just calculate the construction materials used to make a building. And this has been growing until always looking for more challenge, and we have been calculating all the materials used to build a city. Most challenging city I could imagine was Sao Paulo. The Sao Paulo of this about 17 million inhabitants, so not the metropolis, but what they call the cidade, the city. Well, it was a big calculation. I'm not going to tell you how we did it, because it's like 1 hour and it's not very entertaining. And I think it's the most interesting tonight. What I have to tell you is that this calculation was not done, and we did it. So it's not that it was a Google thing, and also we don't use like statistics, like if there is 17 million inhabitants, there must be this consumption of concrete. No, no, we use cadastral data, building by building. So we really took the measurements with a team of people. There was a student of geography, 2 of architecture, and 2 engineers, professional that control us. No, pay attention, concrete. These materials, this list of materials actually is the same as the water tower, putting the city in pieces. I think it's a bit aggressive. I never had problems with censorship. No one got angry with these works, but I think it's a bit aggressive because it's like putting a city in pieces. And so I'm always worried about, so I always keep it in the original language. So this was produced for Sao Paulo Biennale in Portuguese. But when I show it, for example, this photo is took in Basel in Switzerland, I keep it in Portuguese. So concreto, main material, argamasa, mortar, by far the main material. I'm telling you that because the question of aggregates for concrete, I will go back to that. Talking about very different kind of projects, something I did also a while ago was in France, in Saint-Nazaire, they invited me to do an exhibition in the art center here, this kind of Art Deco building. I asked in the city for the next urban renewal plans, and then we found out that the building in front was scheduled to be demolished. So what I did was just an open call. I invite the public to look at the demolition. I told people, like, come on, be aware of the transformations in your city, which is a very, very straightforward and simple action, but for me it was important because it helped me to, it was a lot about taking position in the city. There was in an interview, the mayor of the city was talking a lot about images, how this city that is kind of the prime post-industrial city, how important was to build an image of the city, and he said, I don't build a city, I build the image of a city. He said that in an interview, and I found that very interesting, how he said it, because then I thought, okay, if the mayor is building an image of the city instead of a city, that's what I want to do as an artist. I want to show something that doesn't fit this image. And I don't know what it is, because as you can imagine, I didn't know what would happen that day. The day I called the public to go and see the demolition, I didn't know what would be the position of the machines. I didn't know how far the facade demolition would be. I don't control. This is something that changes every day, and that's why I find it interesting. This is the kind of Art Deco ideal buildings. This is post-war 50s. This year you don't see the billboard, but it's like the new 2000s dock new building. Well, this is none of them, and that's why I think it's worth to work with it. Talking about places that don't fit any image, wastelands, I have to use the Terrenweg. In German you have Brachland, very beautiful word, actually one of the most beautiful, are the most important, because they are places that really escape any definition more than any other, and I find them really very, very important in the cities. And so when I was living in Amsterdam, and there is where working with wastelands became really very, very important, because the city is so well organized. There is really every part of the town corresponds with a kind of almost an ideal plan of a certain moment since the 1700s, and it really feels like a place where there was so much design that you can hardly breathe. So defending the wasteland in Amsterdam became like almost existential. Like I had to do it to survive the city. So I started doing works. I got inspired by the architecture guides. I bought the architecture guides published in Amsterdam of modern architect, and I would do the same but of wastelands. So this is actually literally in one side a map of Amsterdam with all the wastelands pointed. As you can imagine, many of these wastelands have disappeared. Meanwhile, actually you are looking at a map of how Amsterdam was a while ago, which is also quite interesting. Some remain in the port very north, but most are gone. For example, 14, 15, 13, this area had been constructed. Probably if you go to Amsterdam, you will stay there now. So places change and disappear, wastelands, but that's also, this doesn't make them less important. Actually, maybe they are more important because there is an urgency to get to enjoy them. Well, as you can see, there are very different wastelands, like from this that fits more what you call Terrenweg in France, this kind of openness, undefined, to this, which is basically like a little empty lot, not that generous in space, but I think also very interesting because there are processes of decay, entropy that are quite in nature that can be also very, very important. Well, when talking about wastelands or Terrenweg, I have to quote Ignacy Solà Morales. I guess you know him. He was a Spanish architect from Barcelona that wrote, for me, it's like the best text on wastelands, which is called Terrenweg. It's like 6 pages, and I recommend it because I think it's great and it's a very short text. And basically, one of the things he mentions in this text, why wastelands are so important, or he used the French word Terrenweg. He already said vague means vague, like undefined in French, like a wave as well. There's openness, but he used the word possibility, which I think is really very, very good word, or at least that's why I like, that would be the adjective or the word that describes why I love wastelands so much, because they give possibilities. Nothing is defined, so everything can happen. So this text describes this very much. So after doing this map of wastelands, I got once, the first time I got a commission for permanent work. They invited me to do a work that would stay. Permanent means 15 to 50 years, because it's in the Rotterdam port, and in the Netherlands things never last very long. But 15 years is quite permanent for the way I work, as you have seen. And well, it was a very small piece of land, a wasteland, but great because it's on the water. I guess we all agree that some of the best wastelands are the one along the water. I mean, the port, they're like really great places to breathe. And so my proposal was to keep it as it is, as it was. Make sure there is no design or no control on the land. Make sure that the place develops by itself without any design in it. So the same as in Amsterdam, all the wastelands I have been pointing get developed and construct. Make sure this one remains. I got some criticism because actually on the left side there was a wasteland much larger, much more beautiful, really bigger, more exciting. So people say, like, why don't you work with the one there? Well, this is what I had. So I work a bit within what I have. And I couldn't stop a big architecture. I mean, this would never have happened. I could stop a bit of landscape architecture, like a pavilion, a path, things like that. We did a map pointing the wastelands. So this is the one I protect, but this is the big one. People say it was much better here, here. There were many wastelands at that time when we did the project. And the idea of this map was underlined that probably in some years they will all be developed except the one of the project. And that's what you have. This is this big one here, like a big distribution, efficient place nowadays. I also protect this wasteland as a part of an invitation to do a permanent project in Zaragoza, in Spain. And it was important to me because this one got protected forever, which is like quite more beautiful to have it protected in perpetuity. And this work was done in the frame of the world exhibition, the international exhibition Expo Agua, which, you know, international exhibitions are these big programs of development on a big scale. Like where I see more development often is whenever there is a world exhibition or Olympic Games. That's when you really see things changing on a big scale in Europe, the last, well, all around the world, the last decades. So to protect a piece of land in the frame of an international exhibition was a very interesting thing for me to do. So I show you some example of the other guides, because after the guide of Wastelands of Amsterdam, I keep on doing guides. I have some samples here. I can show you later. Oh, you can have actually if you like. Basically, they continue the series of copying the architecture guides, and they are done in different cities. And what is interesting of them is that, well, this is this one in London was done before the Olympic Games. There were a lot of empty pieces of land along the Lee River. You see this thing here is a river. Along the river, there were a lot of wonderful abandoned pieces of land that somehow were going to be affected by the Olympic development. They were not part of the development, but they were going to be affected because things were changing at that time. So it was an interesting moment to review them in this guide. And what these guys do, they present each wasteland, telling what is happening there, telling a bit briefly and quite straightforward what was there. For example, here it was a chemical plant. Who is the owner? Now it's a neighboring mosque. And why still empty? It is very polluted. The mosque wants to make part of a new building of a mosque, but there is a controversy with the neighbors, so all these things are the problematic. So explain not just the past, because this is not so difficult to find the information, but the present. Whom is the owner? What is the problem? Why is not constructed? That's a bit more tricky. There you find a lot of problems, people that don't want to talk to you. And then you get, let's say, into the itchy, difficult subjects. I'm not going to tell you many examples, but if you take the guides, you can read them. That's okay. Ah, yeah, that's the other one of London. This is interesting. Cedric Price had his project there. This is also in the docks in London. That's another of the guides in Rome. Rome also had an Olympic application. Interesting enough, Rome removed their application during the financial crisis. So you could say, okay, then it's not interesting the guide anymore because these pieces of land are not developed, which I would disagree, because actually this is where Rome wants to grow. Like whenever Rome is looking for the future, like big pieces of land to develop, it's going to happen there. It cannot go anywhere else because this is really a large surface. And again, we are along the river. The Rome, you know, is really south. So this is very, very north of Rome. So this is all the land where the city will grow. This is the last of the series we just presented. We did it in Montreal, in a Canadian Center of Architecture. This guide is not of several wastelands, but just one. What I'm doing now is if I find a wasteland that I think is really very interesting, because it has many problems that have to be discussed and there is much to write about it, then I do a book, one of the guides just about the wasteland, which this was the case. This is a quarry of limestone that was used there was an enormous extraction of limestone along the 20th century, but mainly 60s until the 80s, 60s for the World Fair as well. Many famous buildings were built with this stone. And then in the 80s they closed it because it was exhausted. It was just, they just extract too much. They took like 15,000 tons limestone a day in the summertime. In the winter there they cannot work so well. So 15,000 tons, I mean it is enormous. And nowadays the city owns it, and there are a lot of discussions about the future, but it's not clear what's going to happen there. That's why I published this book. Well, this is talking about the history, and here about the end of extraction. And again, the most tricky is the present situation. What is going to be the next project, which we were just discussing recently. And this is the Basel one, is the one I brought, because it's the Swiss one that you can have. This one monitor different wastelands. And I guess at this point you are also thinking, but these are not wastelands, these are all quarries. Well, yeah, they are all quarries, but they are also empty pieces of ground without a clear function, a bit abandoned. And I think by far in Basel, the most interesting empty pieces of ground are the quarries. We call it the gravel pits of Basel, meaning the gravel pits Basel used to build itself. But actually they don't belong to Basel. They are in Germany, they are in France, some are in Switzerland. And well, what is interesting of this guide, because it has gravel pits in 3 different countries, the regulation changes. And what you see changes a lot. Actually in France, they used to extract below the water level, so there are lakes in most of the former quarries. In Germany, oh no, that's not the idea. Go backwards. In Germany, they do this compensation. And in Switzerland, what I found in the regulation in the 60s, in Switzerland, they're filling up the quarries. Right nowadays, they're filling, I mean, in Basel, they're filling up the gravel and sand quarries. And in the 60s, they would fill the quarries with chemical waste, which is chemical waste from the big chemical industry in Basel. And this got forbidden later, and they would fill them up with rubble, demolition rubble, which can be still very dirty. And nowadays, that's not allowed either. And they're filled up with what they call Aushub, excavation earth, like the first layer of earth from the excavation before making a new building, like the foundations excavation. This earth is supposed to be not that polluted. That's just to go a little bit fast of what is going on with these quarries. What are the consequences of the extraction of these quarries? But you can read it if you like, because all the details are there. At the same time, in Basel, we published the guide, and I also did a project to make it more visible. Besides the 10 abandoned quarries, there are many operating quarries extracting gravel. There are some enormous, like Josim Lafarge had at that time, like maybe 3 or 4 of them that extract over 10,000 tons by day in France. But I choose to work with the smallest, otherwise we just couldn't afford, which is called Meyer Springler. It's a family-run Swiss one, and it's really the smallest, the most near the city center. And there they extract just only 1,000 tons a day. I don't know if you know how it goes with gravel, at least in Basel. When the machine takes the gravel, I mean it's the excavator, what they take has, let's say, 25% gravel this size, 25 this, 25, and then sand. So 1/4 bigger. So they take it, they separate into these 4 materials. So from the big gravel, they extract 250 tons by day. So what I did, my artwork was to ask the quarry to bring it to the public square, the 250 tons. So during the art fair, I profit from the fact that the art fair lasts just 1 week. We bring 250 tons in the very early morning. So when the people came to the art fair, it was there. It was 10 trucks. And then on Tuesday, we brought again 250 tons. And then Wednesday, Thursday, well, you see how this goes. So, and then on weekend, luckily, we stop. So there was no more space. Well, here you see the big gravel. Yeah, you asked me why I choose the big and not the small. Well, it's completely aesthetic. Could have been sand as well, but I thought this one connects with the geological. So again, I work about the volume of construction. So this is just 4 days of the smallest of the quarries in Basel. That's how the volume of the thing is. It's a big thing. And something I like of this work is to repeat the work, like to bring the material on Monday, again on Tuesday, again on Wednesday, to repeat, insist, because that's how extraction happens. I mean, the last Monday, but also Tuesday, but also Wednesday, it goes on. So that's what I was trying to mimic. I did the reverse project in Spain with a very big gravel company in Catalonia, Sorilla. And the reverse was to do the opposite. I asked them to stop for 1 day, don't extract anything, just 1 day halt, total silent. And they agreed. And during that day, we could also open to the public during 2 hours. So the public was allowed to walk among the gravel and the sand. What is happening here, of course, there is the non-extraction, clear political comment. But there was something we were offering to the public, which was the material. The gravel and the sand was visible for 1 day. So gravel and sand is this material that generates up the mountains, the high mountains, and through a long geological travel of, you know, how it goes with geology, like thousands, million years. It travels, brought down by the rivers, then it's deposited, the company extract it, and then it's just there, stop for 1 day, and then on Monday it's going to be part of the concrete, it's going to be part of the construction of the city. So we were just there contemplating the material, stop for 1 day in this long travel from geology, mountains, and into construction and concrete. Oh, this is a very similar project I did in Switzerland, in Safiental, in the high mountains. It's a very small gravel quarry, really small, but for me it was worth to do it, because what I like of it is that this situation where you see the mountains as the producer of the gravel, like the rivers bring the gravel down the valley and deposit along the rivers, is very clear. It's like a lesson of geology, so you can really see how things work with the mountains and the river and the gravel. And there, instead of stopping 1 day, we stop 1 hour every week. So the show opened in July, we end in October. So every week, 1 hour stop, 1 hour stop. And this was actually in the August stop. I wasn't there, unfortunately, but you see it was like a party. People enjoy very much, because if you don't have the gravel works, then you have the river, basically. And yeah, people were enjoying the river in this action. And let me see. Yeah, I will, if you have 5 minutes energy, I will finish with some projects, if you have it. Yeah, because I'm talking a lot. Okay, that's the last kind of projects I like to talk, which are very different. They are very legal. So first of all, I need to know whether everyone knows what mineral rights is. Okay, because I also didn't knew what they are. I'm working with all these materials, and I didn't knew. So it's not very well known in Europe. I hear people talking about them in Texas, in Dallas. In the United States, people talk a lot about it. It relates with something they call in America the vertical property. Vertical property is the idea that the ownership in a vertical line is different. For example, the ground, the land ownership is different than the building. This you know, eh? Not often, but sometimes the owner of a land is different than the owner of the building on top. Also, the owner of the air is different than the owner of the building or the land. This architects know. But what I didn't know is that the owner of the underneath the land is also different. That's what mining rights relate. The owner of the resources below the land is normally the government, by country. The mining law changes a little bit slightly by country, but in general is the government. But what is tricky, the governments that own the underneath, the same as the air, they lease it to mining companies to help extraction. So this is the tricky thing. Let's say the underneath is publicly owned, but the governments, they lease it. So when I hear about it in Texas, I was like, wow, I mean, this is a bit, it was very shocking to me. It's like hearing that my hand doesn't belong to me or something like that. I find it very, very strange. And then I look at how it is I live in Rotterdam since 20 years. So I look at how it is in the Netherlands, and no one knows, it's not easy to find, it's not like easy Google. But then I found this map by the Ministry of Economy on oil and gas. And what you see is all the concessions. They call mining permits. So what you see is the country cut in pieces. So each of these pieces, the yellow, the orange, is a concession owned by a different company. The orange are exploration concessions, the yellow are extraction. So this was for me, I will never forget this day. It was late in the night, I was alone in my studio, and then I see this. I talk about myself because I was in Rotterdam, and then I see this map, and then I see, when I click that I am in a concession, and I click to see the name of the concession. It's called NAM. And then I Google to see whom is NAM, and it's owned by Shell. So basically I was understanding that Shell company owns the underneath of the city where I live, and I didn't know about it. So it's a tricky thing, and it really, I don't know, it's something changed for me the day I understood that. And then I decided to do a project where what I was trying to do is to get mining rights myself. I don't want to have mining rights of gas and oil because I'm not that, I mean, I can have a conversation on gas and oil, but I'm not working with gas and oil. I am working with construction materials, as you know already. So I want to have mining rights of metals important for construction, iron, copper. And from all the metals, I thought iron is by far the most interesting for me, because iron, I was talking a lot about concrete and aggregates, sand, gravel. So iron is the main material you need for a concrete construction. And steel, I mean. And then iron, also if you look at the prices of the minerals, is the cheapest. So you cannot think I am going to become a millionaire, I'm trying to speculate having iron ore, because it is really cheap. 1 ton of iron costs like $100 or something like that. Yeah, it's really, well, iron is heavy, it's 8 tons, and it has to go to the blast furnace to produce steel. But nevertheless, it's something that shocked me a lot, how cheap minerals are. So I look for iron ore, that I could have the mining rights, and it was not that simple for an artist. And well, with a grant, with a German university, we tried in Germany, we tried in Spain, was very well, long story, but it was not easy. And then we find that the mining law in Norway is kind of more democratic. I'm thinking everyone should have the right to have mining rights. So I end applying in Norway. So this is a map from the mining authority with all the metal mining rights in the country, the same as the one I showed you of the Netherlands. So that's the official website. And let me see. Yeah, here you see Oslo. Here is the airport, and here there is one very small, kind of the smallest. This is mine. This one here. It's so again, this website is not done by me. It's the public website from the mining authority in Norway, and this is my concession. It's 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer. It's the smallest allowed. I thought it was going to be difficult for me to handle something so big, so I applied to the smallest allowed. It's still not that small. And yeah, if you go to the mining website, you see, and then all these concessions, if you click, you see the owner. And that's my name. And this is, of course, this work is about making everyone aware of the system of the mining rights, so that you know iron comes from somewhere. Someone has been dividing the cake of the country, let's say, to help exploration and help extraction, and someone owns it. So I am calling for awareness of this thing, of whom owns the underneath, because I realize actually in most mining, when people discuss about mining, they are discussing like the technique of mining, but before the technique there is a lot of other things, no? But these things somehow don't come in the press so much. So this work is about this, whom has the right to mine, basically. So, okay, and then of course it is protected because I have no plan to mine it, and the mining rights are exclusive. For the time I have them, that's the tricky part, because after 7 years, they change by country, but in Norway after 7 years, you can expand 2 more years, and then you need to start extraction. Otherwise you lose them, or you have to apply again in 1 year. So the beauty of the mining rights in Norway is that the mining law, that is based on the German mining law, says the depth of the mining rights is infinite until the middle of the earth. They really say that, which sounds like a joke or poetic, until the middle of the earth, but the mining law really says it to avoid any conflict with with New Zealand, obviously. So this is very well protected, and then of course, obviously, if the iron is protected, everything is. Oh, that's not going like I wanted. Everything is protected. You don't touch the iron is not touched. So the stones are also staying there. The trees, the animals, and then of course, so you get the idea. The iron there is magneted. Well, you know, iron can be many different minerals. This magneted. I have the mining rights. Is 300 million years. 300 million years that we are protecting. I mean, these are the terms of geology. For geology, this is normal, but for me, this gives you the idea of what happens if you extract iron. You are destroying something from forever, ever to everyone. You know, it's like 300 million years to generate. So it's a bit scary. So for a while, when I did a workshop or something, we look at it. We look at the mining law in different countries just to know it and to see how it is, how it would be to apply and understand. And then sometimes we apply, not always. This is in Austria. Maybe interesting for you. So this is different mining rights around Graz, and this is the one we apply. In Austria, the application goes different. You choose a point, a dot, just one coordinate, and then it's a circle 425, or 50, no, 425 meters, so 850 meters diameter, so almost 1 kilometer. And then again, until the middle of the earth. So the Austrian are for 5 years long. They're exploration, what is called exploration mining rights, and they're for 5 years. And then this already expired, so I apply again, and now we have it extended for 5 more years. And this is a very small volcano in Spain. In Spain, at the beginning, it was very difficult for me to have mining rights because the mining law makes it really very complicated. They're really, you need to work with a geologist. They demand a lot of documentation. But after having the mining rights in Austria and Norway, I already had some experience. I was not just an artist, but I was actually a bit operating in mine exploration. So we managed to apply to the mining rights of this volcano, which is a really small volcano near Valencia. I was having a show in Valencia with the museum, and it was very, very damaged, and it's very young, but it is, of course, it's a volcano. That makes it a very exciting place. I applied to a volcano instead of iron. I was looking for iron again in Spain, but then I came across this volcano because the volcano also has iron. So it was in the iron reports, but very little iron. But actually, the volcano has been used to extract lava. I'm not sure if you are aware, but lava, volcanic lava, pozzolan, is being used, or it has been used, and it's still being used nowadays, to produce cement. They produce a clinker, which is actually considered nowadays more clean than the other clinkers. So cement companies, they own volcanoes, and they extract the lava. This volcano was owned by Holcim Lafarge at that time. So we had to ask them for permit, which was not easy at all and not fun at all. And then with the mining authority, we got the mining rights. So we protected, but this was just 1 year. Well, this was the application, and this is the contract. So the volcano expired in 1 year, and then we expanded 1 more year, but now I cannot expand it anymore, so this is over, sadly enough. But the Norwegian, actually, they change, and they don't allow someone who is not a Norwegian company to apply. So Kunsthalle, art center in Norway, just apply this Friday. So that's where I am. We are waiting. I think it's going to take, last time took about 1 month to know. So that's where we are. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this wonderful presentation.
Thanks, my pleasure. I like to show these things. So some questions maybe, no?
Yeah, can we ask some questions?
I have one general question, is how do you justify the logistics of your art pieces? Because if you said like you work with the construction masses, this implicates construction's logistics to bring the materials from A to B.
Yeah, I think I understand. You talked about the DSL.
Yes. What is your approach of justifying the process of creating the art pieces? Because it implicates.
I can tell you that I sometimes wake up. Happened to me 2 or 3 times in the night when I'm about to install. When you finally get the permits, the materials, the companies agree, because these works are very critical to extraction. But I have to produce them with the help of the company. So to convince them, you know, I still wake up middle of the night feeling I'm going to go to hell for all these trucks we are moving. So you have a good question. But I'm working with materials. Okay, so I'm working with materials and with concrete and with gravel. This is the subject I am pointing at, which, so materiality. Now there is some people discussing it a bit more the last 2-3 years, mainly because of the scarcity. But was not something being discussed, or people were very aware before 3 years. I don't know if you noticed that, but now you say matter and looks like something we all understand. But 3 years ago was, so I am talking about what I am talking. I have this thing that I am very concentrated. Still, I feel guilty for the DSL, I agree with you.
If you wouldn't have said that you were an artist, I wouldn't have been sure if I considered your work as art. I would have maybe more considered it as research or even architecture or even also urbanistic work or something. What do you think your work makes it artistic?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's tricky to think about it. Actually, maybe you should, because you know architecture better than me.
I don't know.
I always thought, but these are a bit maybe generalizations. I always have, I mean, sometimes I work with architects in workshops, and I see they are a bit more into the solution than me. Like are also other artists, like go into the problem and then go into the problem and go into the problem and no aim to solve it. You know, and I think, I don't say all the architects are solving problems, but the dynamics of thinking is more like that, I think. Looking for problems more than solving. So I look for problems, but then I don't solve them. Yeah, I don't bring solutions.
For me, as a person who just saw your work, and I consider it super clear works of art, because they are, it's an engaged art, and it's making a commentary on kind of, you know, problems of this world, but it has this little point in infinity, which makes it super poetic and makes it art. It's, you know, it starts with the research, basically, you know, having those wastelands, celebrating those wastelands. You just have to, I just thought, hopefully none of your kind of guides got into hands of developers, because that's.
That's
I'm not saying you're a
that will be the worst case scenario. Yes.
And then again, kind of discovering things that you just have mining rights to the middle of the earth, and then protect kind of plants on it. That's like purely art, and it's.
I think it's important to talk about it, because
definitely.
maybe.
But you know, as someone who's just like completely fell in love with what you're doing, the thing that I need to shout loudly that it's so extremely art.
I think depends. It's a lot about the context as well. Like
I think it's about the framing, right? Of course.
Yeah.
I mean,
because if I do this in this, like I present my work, well, years ago was a different talk, but in an art school, everyone told me, yeah, but you're an architect. But then often with architects, they tell me, you are so poetic. Everything you say is like just suggesting. They don't take me serious. So it depends a bit.
Maybe also it's then no, I find it super. Maybe it's also something what architecture is not able to do, because I don't know, we are limited in that, but maybe also not. Maybe it's also a question to the discipline of architecture itself, how far can we go or should we go, and also the questions what we have. But then the next question would be, how did you maybe go more in your direction? Where does all the infrastructure, I mean, you didn't do it on your own, right?
No, I get a lot of help. And I think that's also a difference with architects. I mean, architects work in collaboration, but something I realize also when I have talks, sometimes architects, they think in terms of models, like a model of behavior. They think I'm proposing a model, but actually I'm not. I'm not proud of, you know, I'm very happy, I got these mining rights, but I don't say you should do the same or how I work. Like I told you, my God, I told you I got a permit of Holcim Lafarge to borrow their Vulcano. Because, you know, this I'm really not, I can talk about it years later. At that time, this also gave me more nightmares actually than anything else. You know, I'm not proud of certain way of, I'm not creating a model. That's the thing. But maybe that's also this kind of art.
But you know, didactic art, you know, has a big tradition, but it's not the only the kind of art.
No, it's not the only one.
And I would dare say it's the most boring one.
Yeah, yeah, I know. But what I mean with a model is also like I do things in many different ways. Like we protect a wasteland with the frame of a commission, like this big budget of the public building Ministry of Public Works in the Netherlands, but I also protect another wasteland because I have a good contact with the Conseiller of Urbanism in Belgium, and it's more like if he gets enthusiastic, defend it, and you know, these are totally different ways of operating, and for me they are both quite okay. So I did many things. Many of these works were produced in the field, in the frame of a biennale. That's also something I'm not so proud. An art biennale. I don't say it so much. So, because I was invited to be part of a big art event, I had a very professional team working for the biennale that could get things done and permits, and we protect a piece of land in Taipei. It's a wonderful biennale. This, I'm not ashamed, but it's a wonderful biennale. But I had this professional team with the best contact in the ministry and in the Museum of Fine Arts, doing everything for this project to happen. This is a very privileged situation. I cannot expect every artist to have that, and I have had that, and I use it. I use it with this kind of help. I did all these things. So that's what I mean when I say I'm not a model. Like, not just didactic on the work, but also of behaving as an artist.
I have a question maybe that relates to this. I mean, you're saying these aren't models, but at the same time, I think, you know, as much as your work is material, I think a lot of it is about social relations, and it is about developing a certain kind of expertise, you know. I mean, so much is about kind of logistics, so much is about kind of bringing people together with various kind of specialist knowledges to make it happen. And I guess what I'm curious about is, to what extent is this kind of expertise that you're bringing together for you a kind of means to an end to make the artwork happen, or something that, you know, then also becomes kind of accessible, or, you know, that you feel like you have an obligation or a kind of ethics in sharing? I mean, towards the end, you spoke about the Kunsthal in Norway that in a way kind of now repeats the process. So there is a sense of, you know, you providing a model.
Yeah, well,
maybe to an extent, or like at least a kind of strategy. And I'm curious if you can say a few words about that. You know, like what does that mean to you? This kind of building these social relationships, and then also the kind of expertise factor. Particularly thinking about how much today, you know, knowledge is also power. It's kind of linked to.
I think I mean works. They operate, each work is different, but in general, they make people talk about the place and question the place and share information on the place. I mean, for example, the information here, there is a lot of information, but also when I'm presenting this or people meet each other, there is more information. Like the book in Canada we just presented last week, and then we had put a lot of knowledge together, but then we got together and then we improved it, we went a bit further. And then I know people talking to each other later, they will go further with it. So you start things that go somewhere, which I don't control. or I don't want to control. That's not something I like, but I think it is interesting. And I think what is going further is sharing information about something that the city maybe doesn't really want you to talk about. So I was interested in discussing the future plans. So this often happens with all my different projects, and then making visible. But of course, these are the projects on wastelands, but all these projects on materials. I mean, what I just told you, like the 10,000 tons of the companies extract one day in Basel. I mean, it's like, it's a lot. It's really a lot. Like, if you know that, I don't know, for at least me, I don't look at concrete the same way. No? For me, they change. Or to know that Shell owns below Rotterdam and no one knows about it. This changed how I perceive the ground I'm standing, and the economy that is moving thing, and the ownership of the underneath. It's a critical regard, and I think people are getting that from my work. And then what they do with it, I don't really know, but I think it's also beautiful that people do different things. The Norwegians are working for me. We are having a show together, so that's more like we are together. It's complicity.
You're displaying a demolition or a construction, for example, from a building, or the materials, and it's more or less a finished art piece. But in the sense of it, it's a process that lays behind it. And how much does the process of the art production of your pieces influence you, or how much is it worth to you, the production-wise, and not the finished project that we see as a visitor from your exhibitions?
Yeah, that's a good remark, because you are asking me what is my daily life about. Because to present this photo, it has been a lot of research, which I don't like to present it. I think I want the artworks to be very direct. So if this project is about having the mining rights of a volcano for 1 year, I want that people get it. So I show it kind of in a straightforward way. But then, of course, to get to this volcano or these wastelands, I have seen a lot of places. I go to see many minerals, or all the different minerals in the area, all the different quarries being extracted. I do a lot of research, actually. When I'm invited to be in a new city, the first I do is I meet architects and city planners. I criticize them a lot, but then I really work with them. And we sit in front of a map, a paper map, and I give them my guide so they know what I'm looking for. I tell them, okay, this was Basel, so what is happening here? Like, what would be, in Lucerne, what is the place in Lucerne? And then I got this point in the map, I go to see. And this is super important, but I don't like to show it in the exhibitions, because I think it would make it a bit confused for the public.
But you think it's more or less, I think 90% of the art production is your process, and the finished project is just a display of it to confront the visitor or the society with the demolition of something, or with the mineral rights.
Probably, yeah. The only thing is, like, there is some beauty in some projects that, in a way, when they end, they are also starting. So, like, if we manage to extend the Norwegian mining rights, that's the beginning. That also has an existence after. But yeah, it's true. The production is most of it. Yeah.
There's a question. I really appreciate how you present reality, and that you just show it how it is without trying to make it look sexy, because I think that's something that we could, as architects, also learn from you. But on the other hand, I was just asking myself, if you were talking about design and control, and that design is control, so what is freedom? How you define it, and where do you find it in a world which is designed like from the beginning to the end? Like, where do you find these places of freedom, or these like inspiring groups?
Yeah, let me think. Of course, the outskirts of the city, the place where the city is touching the countryside, or the periphery. These are kind of places that are open, and you find a lot of wastelands, and they are quite places of freedom, I would say. Yeah, I think the Terrenbak for sure. Don't you think so?
I was just asking myself, maybe there's more place of freedom we are not able yet to realize, because everything is designed, but somewhere there might be some possibilities. So it's just a question how you see it.
It's a very Swiss perspective, because we live here in a country which is designed through and through, and actually lots of other countries, they do have enough wastelands to go out and kind of breathe. I had a kind of also technical question actually too. You mentioned that you meet city planners and they show you kind of the map. Did you ever think about kind of knowledge crowdfunding of wastelands? That people will send you their wastelands. There is this kind of demolition atlas. What kind of buildings there have been demolished or about to be demolished, kind of was presented in Basel in the Architecture Museum. To do something like this for wastelands, because a good wasteland is something super personal. You don't want the city to know it,
And I have to. Still, a building on which you just said is. You never had like the urge, or you just showed us with the mining rights to create like a manifesto or like a handout that like other civilian people can come together and acquire such lands and maybe use a loophole, like you said, if you don't mine, we lose the permit. And how much mining do you have to mine to keep it on? Meaning, like, is there like a minimum mining you have to do, like a stone a day, or I don't know, to keep it on and like create like a collective behind it? And that there's a big like, we destroy a building here, like can we put it into the pot? We come together, we get some land, mine it a bit, and create like an object, an art piece. You can sell, you can sell to acquire.
As viewers, there's new disciplines of
your
art.
I see a lot of opportunities to.
Yeah, I mean,
I think land and protect it.
No, you're right. But there are, I mean, of course, the work itself is questioning the mining law. And the first thing it does is presenting it. So to make use of it and improve it, you need to know it, because if you don't know Shell owns Rotterdam, how can you contest it? And actually, I don't know if you're right. Yeah, there's something about the map of the Netherlands that is most interesting. There were some lines. I didn't point; it was too much. But there were some strips like that. I don't know if you noticed those. These are the applications. If I was a real activist, that's where you have to go for activists. That's the ones that the minister is deciding whether they give them the mineral rights or not. These are the... Anyway, I think I am kind of giving the information so people can do something with it, but I don't want to do it. And I also, as an artist, I also enjoy that I can be very radical. So when I say I don't do anything in the wastelands, I really don't do anything. So for me, there is not like a smaller design or a bigger design. It has to be radical, and art, at least, it has a lot of disadvantages, but I can afford that. So I really don't do anything. Well, okay, there are exploration rights. So I'm supposed to do exploration. I do exploration, but that never touches, like magnetometer. If there is a stone, take a sample, but never drilling. So I'm very into not touching. But the idea of people from the community organizing, I have heard that from some people as a reaction of my work, and I think it's a great idea. I don't want to organize it myself, because I really don't like to tell people what they have to do. Like, I also don't like people to tell me what to do. And also coming as a foreigner would be a bit paternalistic, so that's not my style. Yeah, but the problem is, the mining authority, they are not silly, like in Norwegian they make it, I don't know, I don't really know why they change it, but they make it more restrictive now. But I think it's an interesting idea. For sure, there are all these movements now questioning the rights to of the nature, with the idea of bringing nature rights, which I think is quite an interesting direction for that.
How much did it cost you to buy?
Ah, yeah, I forgot to say that. Yeah, that's the best. And also in Switzerland, I say because it's so expensive, everything. The Austrian are 16 euros by year.
Okay.
Yeah, I sometimes have the contract, which is super funny because you see the price. The contract, the Austrian has 16 by year. And the Norwegian are 1,000 kron, which is like 100 euros by year, the first 3 years. Yeah, so it's nothing. It's like it's like a fee, like a little tax for the. It's like a bureaucratic. It's nothing. It's really cheap, so cheap.
But then, if you would do mining and you would find something, then you would have to pay like taxes on what you.
Yeah, extraction has more taxes. I don't know them because I'm not into extraction, but for sure, extraction pays larger taxes. Yeah, for sure, and depends by country. I think in Norway, if there is extraction, the owner of the land would get a percentage. So it's almost like a cooperative.
And if you want to do extraction, but there is a house on top or a landowner.
The Norwegian mining law tends to give priority to the economic interest, but they would look at it, how much, I mean, any plan of mining comes with a plan of the economical value, how much money can be done, how much mineral would be extracted, etc. But the mining law says, there is a priority to the economical value.
I'm kind of surprised that you were able to buy mining rights, because I imagine that the whole world is looking for resources all over the planet, and big firms like Glencore, they know every lot in every country where there is things to mine. So how is this not like? Is it just not interesting enough to mine that you could get it? You surely could not get like an interesting lot probably.
Yeah, I mean the thing with minerals changed a lot.
Yeah.
Like actually, when I did this project, no one was into minerals or resources. Actually, I was going to use it as an argument to extend it. Like there was so little value that I couldn't invest in the exploration, so I need 7 more years. So things change. But still, these are very small iron deposits that don't have a big value, the ones I choose. The big iron deposit there is in Kiruna, in Sweden. And again, if I was an activist, I would look at the mining rights of Kiruna, and wherever they don't have it, that I guess they got most, I could go there. But I'm not an activist. It is my choice to go to a very small mining deposit, very forgotten, like this volcano in Spain. It's really forgotten. It's not even active. The quarry is not active anymore. So there is no value in this very small deposit. But I think it is meaningful because it's a deposit, and through this work, and it's still there, the material. So it's not that, actually in Norway I applied to 2 places, but one of them later we discovered that there was no iron, there was something wrong in the report, so we gave it back. So there is iron and there is lava in the volcano, it's just very, very small. Whether, I mean, really resuming very much, but it's always, for a mining company, is about the regulation, the environmental rules and so on, which change by country, the the technique, how much they have to pay to extract, and the price. These 3 things makes that something is valuable or not, and these are all very small.
You talk about the remoteness of most of your parcels that you've bought the rights to, but one of them at least you showed in Austria, the Kirchberg.
Yeah.
I had the impression that was the whole town.
Yes, it's good you asked me this.
Did you have a different reaction from people?
Yeah, no, it's good because I explained this wrong. Actually, they are very small. I don't know if I said remote, maybe I'm tired, but they are very near cities. So actually, with the whole Norway, I could have go really north, exotic, and something very poetic and beautiful for art, but I went so near Oslo as I could. And then in Austria, I went near Graz. I did that on purpose because the work is about construction and concrete and iron, so I want to be near the city. So I go to the city. In Graz, there is no reaction. No, I don't. No, I had a reaction from the volcano, but then in Norway and Graz, this thing got completely silent. I mean, there's not a billboard or something that says this is a project of Lara Almarcegui.
That's what I don't exactly understand. I see very well how you turn the work about material into an expression, right? The big pile of gravel and pigment and not pigment, the big. I don't completely understand how you turn this into a sort of an expression.
Yeah, it's not easy. It's not easy. I think it's an interesting work, and that's why I do. But already from the beginning, before I started, I was not sure because, you know, it's underneath, it's invisible, it's bureaucratic, it's legal. So I know enough about art to know this doesn't fit in the language of art. But then
it's interesting to ring all the doorbells in the town and just remind people that you bought the ground underneath there.
No, but you kind of said the expression. So we just had like our little chat, but the price of getting the land is kind of the expression. And if you would go door by door and tell the people, hey, the house where your house sit on, the value on what you sit on is like, it's not
the price
almost close to the value of the land where the house stands on, but it's the land where the house. It's a mindfuck.
I totally agree.
It's kind of I sense it as the expression to have what is the price of getting this.
I agree with you. And then if we talk about numbers, as we say, the price of iron, the price of sand, because of a project, and the Netherlands is an expensive country. I asked them to, I was a bit into sand dredging, from also the industry of dredging sand from the sea and the lake. And they say it's 10 euros, 1 ton, with the transport. 10 euros, you know, of sand. You know, the price is like so cheap. At the gravel, actually, we should ask how much it is in Basel. You know, it's so cheap. I could, you know, we are Latin, but we could cry, you know. It's really cheap for this geological ancient thing. It's very sad.
Actually, another question. Like, you told us the big company like Shell owns a lot of properties in Rotterdam.
Yeah.
So, did you actually do some research to why they own the land? Because it's like on, how do you say?
City ground.
Yeah, you can't like dig there. So, what's the reason behind
because there is gas and oil, and what they own is not the land, is the underneath.
Yeah.
Okay.
How much deep underneath?
Yeah. I guess the middle of the earth. I didn't read the Dutch mining law, but probably. I don't know that actually. I didn't look at it. If you ask me where it starts, I don't know, because that's not not even in Norway or Austria. The beginning of it is not settled. It's, there is this word in the mining laws that is very tricky, but I think very interesting if you are discussing matter and material, which is resource. I think in German, Ressource. It's a very important word because they call it resource, and if it's a resource, it's owned by the government and they give it to mining companies. So that means if it's a potato or a cave or a cellar, it's not a resource. That's the owner of the land. But if it's iron or gas, then it's the Ministry of Economy of the Netherlands or Norway or whatever. You know, it is. So it's not about the high; it's about the material. But this question of resource, again, the question that the underneath is a resource to be extract and be profitable is the problematic thing that is being questioned with this work. But the mining law states it very well. Actually, I look at it in Switzerland. There is no concessions because there is just salty water, I think. That's all I could find. So that's good news for you. Except the gravel, of course, the aggregates.
No more questions?
Well, yeah, maybe something a bit more general. I saw your work in Basel, and also I've been showing, for example, the demolition of the gross market in San Sebastian to students last year, last semester, and I was wondering, I mean, this is 30 years now, and I guess at this time it was really a very strange action to do, and nowadays I felt like we have a lot of interest, and also in architecture schools there is, in the last years, a lot of interest towards these questions, these approaches. So how do you feel looking back at these 30 years, like of changement of interest, which is somehow of course something positive, somehow of course a long way to go. So just maybe looking back on your work and how it developed with this change of interest.
Yeah, it's strange because there are things I did because where I did, like I told you, this feeling with over design and disagreeing with demolition and so on. A bit intuitive, but anyway, that's how I did, and I talk about it many times. But the time passed, and I see things also in the frame of that, like I told you today, that it was the 90s, it was before the financial crisis, even before the scarcity of resources, things were seen different. Things change a lot. So even the project, so for example, to make a critical comment of construction almost sounds moralistic after the financial crisis, like everyone does. So that's a bit more uncomfortable. The question of materials as well, many people are talking about it. So sometimes I get a bit worried myself, actually, because I put the radio and people are talking about it. So it's like yesterday, like, oh, I'm going to talk to these people about all these things everyone is talking about now. It's not so much fun, you know. When I was alone, it was kind of more exciting. At the same time, with the mining rights, it's super beautiful. That's maybe the most beautiful, because I think the whole discussion of the rights of the nature, which is very much on the media now, and I think you all know what it is. I hope I don't have to explain you. In a way, it's kind of going a step further from the projects of the mining rights. So that's super interesting. So, you know, things change and some things get very exciting and interesting. Still, it's a bit silly to talk about the rights of the nature without knowing shell owns below your feet. I still think it's interesting to know whom owns you.
My family has a holiday house in Maine, many thousands of kilometers from here, in the northeast of the US. I can say the mining rights are owned by Nestle underneath our holiday house for the water extraction that they sell to New York City.
Or water? Or
water.
Oh. Wow. No, good to know.
Thank you very much.
So thank you again. I think it's very valuable and precious, your work, and you shouldn't stop. I think it's very important to go on, especially as art. And I would suggest that we change locations and have some pizza at the Elephant Bar. There should be pizza for everyone. If there's not pizza for everyone, you should come to us and then we will order some more.
Yes.